You've got your life as a musician. You've also got your life as a health advocate that we'll get to eventually.
Yeah.
Let's start with the music. Can you remember? Like, did you grow up in a household where there was just music everywhere and you could play 17 instruments by the age of 3? How did you come into music?
Yeah, none of that. In fact, my father, throughout my childhood, my eldest brother played drums in a band, and that's probably what really got me interested in the first place. At about 10, he gave me a beat-up little acoustic guitar that he had, because he bought a proper one, shall we say. And I taught myself guitar. But no, it wasn't a musical household at all. And simply, probably, the greatest factors where we moved to in Sydney from Melbourne when I was 8, we had no electricity. So there was no record player, there was no anything. So no.
The way we're going in Sydney, there'll be large swathes of Sydney where that'll apply very soon.
Yeah, well, at the moment, yeah. But so I think my oldest brother was my first inspiration, and my father throughout my childhood, as I was teaching myself guitar, and then got a band together in high school with one of the Farris boys. Dad always said, "Keep it as a hobby, get a real job."
Were you naturally good instantly? You hear the occasional anecdotal story that is picked it up on work, but I get the impression the vast bulk of people getting to any level of musical talent is just you enjoy just doing incredible amounts of work at it.
Yeah, look, I absolutely fell in love with music. And I think as a result of that, I obviously had some kind of ear for it, a lazy ear. I'm no genius musician, but I certainly, in my youth, in my teens and all that, I just kind of had the guitar all the time at home. We lived in a really remote little village in Sydney, a place called Cottage Point, which is smack bang in the middle of a national park. So I'm watching all the fire alerts at the moment because we're absolutely surrounded in that place. Anyway, I've since bought a little fibro shack there with my wife Lane about 5 years ago. But growing up there was only about 4 or 5 families living there permanently. All the rest were holiday shacks.
Wow.
It was 10 kilometres to the nearest town, which is a place called Terry Hills. It's a long story. Mum and Dad opened up a restaurant in the house right on the water at Cottage Point. And it got so busy, the restaurant, that I actually literally had to hitchhike home from Terry Hills into a national park to get home after school each day.
And so, because I remember reading Keith Richards wrote his autobiography called Life, and it's...
Great book, yeah.
Yeah, like the second half of it, they take a lot of drugs and run around in castles and all that. But when he's talking about his childhood, he says he'd had relatives who would say they'd come over for Easter or whatever, and he was always polite. He'd come out and meet them all. Then he would just go back into his room and play the guitar. Yeah. And he would play his guitar for hours and hours a day, and it just burnt into his muscle memory. And the way that he could keep performing at a level when clearly he had some issues in his life at times, but he just played for tens and tens of thousands of hours.
Yeah, I wonder if there is something to that theory of 10,000 hours, you know. But, that's kind of what it takes. You really, one, you have to be totally passionate about it and love it. And I think, there's a whole lot of elements involved in, I guess, being a performer, a musician. You have to be willing to put your life out in the public eye, all that sort of thing. You know about that. So it's when you start out, you're not born a rock star. You start out as just a simple kid picking up a guitar, and then meeting some guys in school or whatever, like we did, and starting to go, oh, you know what, we're a bit different. We sit outside the box, and that was something I think which INXS really did. We were very different people and very different group of guys, different band than most other bands that were around when we were starting out.
By the age of 3, how did you come into music?
Yeah, none of that. In fact, my father, throughout my childhood, my oldest brother played